Okay, we are on Nun Amud Aleph 50a. Okay, so we had this statement. Just trying to find it. We had this statement of a Maimar. 1 second. We had this statement of a Maimar that said that if a husband and wife sell the Nichsei Maluk, once again, the property that a woman brings into the marriage, one of the ways that we assess the property is we say, listen, you can keep the property, or she'll say, I want to keep the property. It's called Nichsei Maluk, the pluck. So meaning she gets to keep it, he gets to pluck away at it. Meaning she keeps the field, it's her field, but for the duration of the marriage, he is able to use the field. He has the rights, he has the legal right to use the field. So a Maimer had this cryptic statement before that if they both sell it, it's not good. So what does it mean? If they both sell it, it's not good. Yeah. So now we're gonna say we're basically gonna talk about a case. It's gonna be relevant to a Jew, to a servant, to an Eved. However, when you have something where you don't own the field, but you own the rights to the field. So now, how do you view that? On the one hand, somebody owns the field, it's their field, but they can't use it because the rights to use it belong to somebody else. Right. So now what happens if I go and I own the field and Jules owns the rights to the field? So I go and I sell the field. Well, I sell the field to Steve. So what did I sell him? He can't use it now either because I never had the rights to sell the right to use it. Now, if Jules sells his rights to the field to Steve, so can you sell the whole field? Well, on the one hand, no, because it doesn't belong to you. On the other hand, what's a field if not for using? So that you could sell. So now we're going to talk about that. And that's going to be relevant to Nichsei Maluk, because Nichsei Maluk is the woman owns the field and the husband owns the right to use the field. So when a Maimar said a husband and a wife cannot sell the field, let's figure out why. So Ibais Ema, a Maimar, he agreed with the statement of Rabbi Dovid. So we're going to go a little bit to the source of what we call Kinyan HaPeiros and Kinyan HaGuf. Peiros literally means fruit. Kinyan HaPeiros is the fruit of something, the produce of something. So you have an acquisition in the produce, you own the rights to use something. And then Kinyan HaGuf, the guf is the actual body of the field. So where does this come from? So an interesting halacha is that we know that there's the two kinds of Jewish servants. One's a non-Jew who gets sold into slavery. So he has to go to mikvah. And as long as he's under a Jew's jurisdiction, he has the same halachas as a woman does, basically almost all of the same laws that we do. When he leaves servitude, he has to do another, go to mikvah again, and then he's a full Jew. So it's actually interesting, a non-Jew becomes a slave, a servant actually goes through a conversion process. And the other kind of servant, is a Jew. A Jew stole, he can't afford to pay back, so he goes into servitude. Now, if you kill a Jew, right? If one kills a Jew, so they're liable for punishment. If one kills a Jewish servant, same rule as anybody else. However, there's a special rule by a non-Jewish servant who gets sold into slavery that if his master, it would come to the event that his master would hit him or something like that, and he doesn't die right away. It takes him 2 days, and then he dies. So then the master's not liable to all the same laws as a regular murder. So with that introduction, we're going to have 4 opinions now. Titania Hamocher is Havdo. So now, let's say I go and I sell my servant. However, I sell my servant to Jules, but I tell Jules, listen, I'm selling you this servant, however, upasak imo shim shenu shloshim yom. But for the next 30 days, he's mine. So I want cash. So I sell Jules a servant. I give myself $500,000 of cash. However, for the next 30 days, let's say I'm moving to Portland, so I still need him to help me pack my boxes. Yeah. So he's yours. But for the next 30 days, he's mine. Rav Meir Omer, Harishon, me, the original owner, who has sold him to somebody else, but I still have legal rights to him for the next 30 days. Yeshno bedin yoma yomayim. I'm still under the rule of yoma yomayim, of this limitation that if the servant were to die after 2 days, so then I would not be as guilty, not as guilty. I'd be guilty, but I wouldn't get the same punishment as a regular murder. Why? He's under my jurisdiction. You're right. I sold him to Jules, but for the next 30 days, he is working for me. So therefore, he's still considered mine, even though I sold him. But since he's working for me for the next 30 days, I'm still considered his owner regarding this halacha of Yoma Yomayim, of being under, having this limitation of the death penalty. That
Is he a Hebrew slave or is he a Canaan?
Yeah, Canaan slave.
Okay.
A Hebrew slave,
Yeah.
no matter if he dies after 2 days,
Right.
you're just as liable as anybody else.
Okay.
It's just interesting that a special halacha by a Canaan slave. Yeah, good question. Thank you for clarifying. So the Hasheni, the guy who bought the slave, Eino bedin yoma yomayim, mipnei she'eino tachtov. He is not under this rule of yoma yomayim, of when it takes more than 24 hours for a servant to die. Why? Because he's not practically he's not working for me. Even though I own him, the person owns him, the second guy owns him, but he's not his for the next 30 days. Therefore, he's not bound by this rule. That is opinion number one, that it all depends on who is he working for. Why? What's the logic? Because Savar, Rav Meir holds, Kinyan Peros, Kinyan Agof, Rav Meir holds that a Kinyan Peros, one who owns the rights to something, that is like owning the actual thing itself. So this is like one of these lines that comes up different places, and it's always has a lot of ink spill trying to explain it. But maybe the basic idea is that you have something, you have a mug. The mug is used to drink from. So if you have the rights to drink from it, so in essence you own the mug. You don't own the name of the mug. You don't own it's not you. But at the end of the day, you have the usage of the thing. So that is kinyan aguf. That's like owning the thing itself. That's Rav Meir. And therefore, since it's like owning the thing itself, it's like you own the slave, you're under this rule of Yom O Yomayim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, the opposite. Hasheni yeshno b'din Yom O Yomayim. Mipnei shehu kaspo. Harishon eino b'din Yom O Yomayim she'eino kaspo. Kasavar kinyan peres lav kinyan aguf tami. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, we don't look at the person who owns the rights to the eved, to the slave. We actually look at the person who owns the slave. At the end of the day, I'm the owner, and at the end of the day, I sold him to somebody else. The second guy is the owner, even though practically he's not working for him now, but he still owns the guf. He owns the body of the slave. It's his slave. So Rabbi Yehuda holds, kinyan peiros laf to kinyan aguf tami. Even though you own the rights to the person, but at the end of the day, you don't own the person himself. It's always interesting to try to figure out the person. If you own the usage, and I just own the actual, so what do I own?
Yeah.
That's the hard part. What do I yet own?
Right.
I don't own the usage to it. But I guess at the end of the day, when you buy somebody or you buy something, you own it, and I guess if you could in your head divide it up, you own all the usages of it. So all those usages have been sold, but that doesn't take away your full ownership of it. Just interesting. So if I can't drink from it, so what do I own about it? Something. I own something, just not the ability to drink from it. That's interesting. So those are two opposite opinions. And now we're gonna have two more opinions, which are going to be somewhere in the middle. So Rabbi Yossi Omer, and just remember that Rabbi Lazar, who says that when a husband and a wife sell the next same alog, our Maimar, he's going to agree to the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, which we haven't seen yet. Rabbi Yossi Omer, turning the page, Shnehem Yeshnan Bedin. They both have this halacha applied to them, Bedin Yoma Yomayim. So if either the one who owns the slave or the ones who owns the usage of the slave, if either of them were to hit their slave and it would take more than a day for the guy to die, so then they would have this halacha applied to them. Why? Zemi pnei shehu taktov and zemi pnei shehu kaspo. Well, you own him. You own the rights to him. Kaspo, he's your money. He's under your jurisdiction. Now, what's the logic behind that? Because he's not sure. Umisapkale, he's a suffix. He's not sure. Kinyan peiros, kinyan guftami, ilaka kinyan guftami. He's not sure if this concept that when you own the usage of somebody, it's like owning the person himself. He's not sure if that's true. He doesn't know. He's Mesupak. Rav Meir had clarity. Rabbi Yehuda had clarity. Rabbi Yossi, he's not sure. Yeah. Now, so what do you do when you're not sure? Safek nefashos lahakel, right? Safek nefashos. It's coming. You want to kill the guy who killed the slave, right? Let's say you warned him. If you hit your Evan and he dies, so we're going to kill you. So now the guy goes. So I, the owner of the slave, I go and I hit him, or you, the person who owns the rights to the slave, you hit him, and it takes him more than a day or two to die. So now, if we view you as, if you say kinyan apeiros, kinyan aguf, if owning the rights of the Eved is like owning the Eved himself, so then we will not be able to kill you the way we can kill a regular person who kills somebody else. However, if that concept is not true, so then you get the same death penalty as anybody else. Now, what do? So the rule is safek nefashos lahakil. If we don't know, we have a safek, a doubt regarding killing somebody, in this case, the owner of the slave, the owner of the usage of the slave. So then you don't have a right in the case of a doubt to go and kill him. Safek nefashos lahakil. Very interestingly, the Rashbam here on the side learns it out from a pasuk. He brings a scriptural source. From Bamidbar. Sounds like that's where we learn the rule of safek nefashos lahakel. And Tosos is like, you don't need a pasuk for this, right? Meaning, let's think about it. You have money, and you don't know. Okay, that mug, Jules, that mug is mine, or you're not sure whose mug it is. So the halacha is you leave it where it is until you can bring up proof that it's mine. So right now it's under your jurisdiction, so it's yours. Unless I have a proof, if I have a doubt, I can't remove it from your hands. So what do you need a scriptural source for to teach you that, by the way, in a case of a doubt, you shouldn't kill somebody? Well, it's not better than money. If money you don't take, in a turn. So that's his question, a very strong question on the Rashbam, that would the Rashbam really hold that without a scriptural source, if you have a doubt, you would go and kill somebody? And that's a little bit hard to imagine. On the other hand, what do you need a source for? That's just an interesting nugget. Interesting, from the Rashbam. But safek nefashos lahakel, if you're ever in doubt, it comes up sometimes, I think, if you're not sure what death penalty to give the person, right? So you can't give them the more strict death penalty, things like that. Safek nefashos lahakel. In a case of doubt, you're always more cautious. If you don't know if you should kill somebody, so you don't go ahead to do it. Either interesting because you have a source, or because it's just logic. Okay, that's the third opinion. Fourth opinion relevant to us, Rabbi Lezer Omer, Shnehem Eino B'din, Yoma Yomayim. Both of them are not under this rule, Yoma Yomayim. Zelafi she'eino takto. So me, the one who owns the slave, well, he's not. You, the one who bought the rights of the slave, so he's not working for you yet. He's still working for you for 30 days. So therefore, the halacha doesn't apply to you. V'zeh, me, the owner of the slave, lefi she'eino kaspo. So he's not mine anymore. So you can't say that the rule applies to me. V'amar Rava, my time Rabbi Lazar. So what is Rabbi Lazar's logic? So if you're not sure of this principle, so then we should apply the rule of Yomi Yomayim, meaning Yomi Yomayim is a leniency. So Yomi Yomayim is a leniency. Killing you is a stringency. So the third opinion held, so you don't know what to do. So safek nefashos lahakel, you can't kill a guy. But according to Rabbi Lazar, he says this halacha, the leniency that doesn't apply. So why doesn't the leniency apply? So Amar Kra, lo yakum ki kaspohu, kaspo ha miyuchad lo. Rabbi Lazar learns from this pasuk of Yoma Yomayim. It says ki kaspohu. Rashbam says it's extra words in the pasuk. So because it has to give a reason, why you shouldn't kill him, because he's kaspohu. I mean, we know we're talking about your evet, so of course he's your money. What does it mean? So he says ki kaspo means kaspo hamiyuchad lo. It has to be kesef, which is solely yours. So the only case where this leniency will apply is if we can see this evet as being solely yours, meaning it has to be fully yours. In a case where you sold him to Jared, but you're still using him for 30 days, so that's not considered solely yours. So that's why Rabbi Dovid holds that the leniency is not going to apply. So now back to us, the same thing would be true by a husband and a wife. If they go and they sell their nichsei malug, he owns the rights to it, she owns the land itself, and now they sell it. A Maimar says it's not a good sale because he agrees with the opinion of Rabbi Dovid. Now, what's interesting is that this pasuk is a special halacha, seemingly a special halacha by a Canaanite servant, that you do not kill the master if the servant, it takes him more than a day to die from the hit. What in the world does this have to do with selling a field, right? Whenever you see a halacha being learned out of a pasuk, so at least for me, your go-to way to think about it is like, okay, it's a special halacha in this category, unless you could prove to me that should apply somewhere else. But we shouldn't just apply everything everywhere just because we feel like it.
Well, maybe the whole logic is it's a neither this nor a that. Not this.
And not.
It's not this,
right.
It's not that.
Right. So what you see from the Gemara is, like Steve is saying, is that this rule might be, it was taught by the case of a servant, but the rule is being megala. It's revealing to us something deeper. You see from the Gemara that we're not learning a specific halacha from Eved Kanani, because what should the Gemara do next? The Gemara says, Ma Eved Kanani is a special. Don't compare him to monetary sales. But you see that the Torah is showing us, like Steve said, that it sounds like to in the case of sales, we don't view you as the full owner. That's really what it's saying. When you only own the body of the slave, but you don't own his usage, or if you own his usage, you don't own him, so then you don't really have complete ownership of it, and therefore, whatever will apply, will apply. So in this case, what's going to apply is that the leniency doesn't apply to you. And in our case, what will apply is the fact that you can't sell it. But you see from this whole story that this kinyan haperes to kinyan haguf applies many places. It doesn't only apply by a Canaanite slave. So you see that here, when the Torah tells you this, it's not telling you a specific halacha, a specific rule by, in the Shulchan Aruch, you wouldn't necessarily, you would also put this under the category of, Canaanite slaves. But the logic it's teaching you is much greater. It's teaching you that really what the Torah is telling you is when you own the usage, either it's like owning the body of the slave, or it's telling you when you own the usage, it's not like owning the body of the slave, or it's telling you that I'm not sure what to do, or the fourth opinion is it's telling you that you're not really the full owner. Yeah. So too, Amar said they each cannot sell the nichsei malug because you only own the rights to the field and you only own the field, but not the rights. So that's what Amar meant. That's who he was going like. So Jared with the 2 dots on 50B, nun base, the number base.
One would think that she had the rights, he had the rights, she has the field. If they sell it there together, it seems like it'd be a whole thing.
Right. But each one is not the full owner.
But when they sell it, there is a full owner.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
She's need they're in the separate rooms or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it says even when she sells it to her husband, she can't sell it to her husband. According to this opinion, the fourth opinion of Elazar, because you don't own it. Yeah. Now what's interesting is that they point out that a regular partnership, right? So if me and you go into a business deal together, and now we own we own this building. So, but we're shutkin, we're partners in it, that we could sell. There's a big difference. When I own the field and you own the rights to the field, that's one thing. But when we both each own 100% of whatever we own, so that's already something else.
Then you,
Yeah.
it almost looked at the analogy that you give somebody the responsibility to do a job, but not the authority. The authority. Yeah, it's kind of
Like telling a kid
another concept similar to it.
Telling a kid to do something.
Huh?
Like telling a kid, giving him some responsibility.
Yeah,
But you don't give him authority to
right.
then make his sister do it. She has to do it. I'm thinking of somebody in particular. Okay.
You can say what?
I'm thinking of somebody in particular. My 7.5-year-old. You do it. No, it's your job. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So velo ish chazaka b'nichse ishto. So we really had this in the Mishnah already, and now we're going to take a different angle at it. So the Mishnah told us that a husband does not have a chazaka, does not have if he's in the wife's, if by nichse malog, our famous nichse malog, if the husband using it for 3 years and the woman didn't protest anything, so he does not establish a legal right because it's not the nature of a woman to protest against her husband. Okay, the Hamar Rav, so an Ashes Ish, a general lady who's married, an Ashes Ish, the wife of a man, Ashes Ish, Tzricha Limchos. So Rav said a cryptic statement, like many good statements are said. Yeah, a cryptic statement. A woman who owns property. So if somebody is on that property for a number of years, whatever it is, she has to go and protest. And if she doesn't, so then after 3 years, whoever this person is will establish a legal right to the land. Who is this person? Who does she have to scream and say, get off my field, in order to prevent them from establishing a legal right? So the Gemara says, Biman, who are we talking about? Ilema ba'acher, a random guy comes. So she's married, she owns the field, the husband has the rights to the field. And now I walk into the field and I start eating up the apples, right? So now, if I'm there for 3 years and no one said anything, so Rav says, well, she has to be mocha. She has to protest because, and if not, then it's going to be mine. So, but who are if you're talking about somebody else that comes onto the field, Hamar Rav, ein magzikin b'nichse eshes ish. Rav said, no, the fact that the lady who owns the field doesn't say anything, that's because she was hoping her husband would say something. Well, he's the one who gets the rights to the field. So if a random guy goes there and he's there day in and day out, you can't blame her for not saying anything. It's up to him to not say something. So therefore, that can't be who Rav was talking about. So who is this person that the lady has to make sure that she makes a protest? Elolav bebal, sounds like we're talking about the husband. If the husband's there for a certain amount of time, but that we already said that it's not the nature of a lady to go and protest against her husband. So Amarava, what is that?
I don't know where they got that from.
Yeah, exactly. So the nature
a few occasions.
Nature has changed. Sometimes the Rishonim say a concept of Mishanu Ativim, nature's change. Certain dangers in the time of the Gemara that aren't dangerous anymore. So not always, but sometimes they say, times have changed, and therefore you don't have to. Some people are very lenient, about leaving your water uncovered. Right. So the Gemara says, you can't drink it afterwards because snakes.
Right.
So many are very lenient about it because times have changed.
Right.
So Steve is applying that only for himself, not for other people. We'll send his wife the recording afterwards. Yeah, the Amar Rav. So who is Rav talking about? Elalav bebal. Is it your husband you're talking about? That if he's on your field, but we know that's not true. So Amar Rava, no, let's clarify. La'olam bebal. You're right. If the husband's on the field, she has to make a protest, and if not, the field belongs to him. But hold on, we just explained that that's not true because that's not the nature. Whatever, don't argue. It's not the nature of a woman to make a protest against her husband. So what case are we talking about? Ukigon, for example, shechafarba, chafar is to dig. He dug. He started digging in the field. Boros shichin u'ma'aros. I always forget what shichin is. Boros is a pit. Ma'aros is a cave. Shichin is a vault. basically different kinds of
Yeah.
things that can hold water. One's deeper,
Oh,
one's less.
right,
I
right.
think
I guess.
yeah. These two always come together. They're always a package deal. Boros Shikun Amaros. There's yeah. So now he starts digging on her field and damaging her field. Now, the Rashbam points out it's only a field that is not usually dug on. If you usually dig on this field, so that's the normal usage of it.
Oh,
That's not what we're talking about. If the field is not usually, you have a beautiful orchard, and all of a sudden, he comes with a with a big
echo.
yeah, something like that, exactly. And he starts plowing in, digging the field there. So that's the case where, hold on, if he does that for 3 years and she doesn't say anything, so does this make you happy? Even though a woman doesn't naturally make a protest against her husband, but when it comes to damaging, money's money, when it comes to damaging her property, then even the woman will say something. So times haven't changed. So yeah, the Hammer of Nachman, hold on, it doesn't work that way. Amar Rabba Baravua, Ein Chazaka Linizakin. You can't establish a legal right just by damaging someone's property. Why? Because so at least for like 1 second, the Gemara doesn't think that this is true. Because the person watching you, he sees that you're not using the field normally. So he doesn't have a reason to assume that you're going to own the field one day. He has a reason to protest. You only protest when you see someone using the field, cultivating it, because that guy's going to start claiming to you in 3 years from now, oh, it belongs to me. But this guy who every day makes a different pit and a different hole in your field, okay, he's a weird guy. Maybe get him off your property, right? But that wouldn't be a reason to establish legal right.
When you make a protest, are you supposed to come with witnesses too, or is it just
That we had earlier.
did
Yeah.
you have that? Yeah.
Machlokas, if you have to do a protest in front of the person himself, or even not in front of him,
Yeah.
because maybe the word travels to him. I think it was earlier that they're
Okay.
witnesses. I believe so. Yeah, good question. So says the Gemara, no, almost like just flips on his head. No, it's not true. Not ein chazaka l'nezakin, ein din chazaka l'nezakin. It's actually the exact opposite. Usually it takes 3 years of someone on your property and you being quiet that the guy establishes legal right. But here, ein din chazaka l'nezakin means when a guy is damaging your property and you don't say something, immediately he could establish a right to the field. I'm damaging your property, you said nothing. What greater proof that it doesn't belong to you? You're not going to sit back and watch someone just destroy your property. So the Gemara says, so ema ein din chazaka l'nezakin. So once again, Rav said this statement that a woman has to make a protest. Who was he talking about? The Gemara said we're talking about a case where the husband is damaging a field, which is not usually damaged. And Rav Nachman says that would really, that would create an immediate chazaka if she doesn't say anything. Therefore, she has to go and say something. Okay. So now we're going to say no. Iba is ema. And another answer. Really, it takes 3 years to establish a legal right, even when the person is damaging your property. So if that's true, so what's our case? The case is the following interesting case. Iba is ema. Lav itmar Allah did when Rav Nachman said ein chazaka l'nezakin, what was he referring to? He wasn't referring to regular damaging a field. He was referring to a particular case. Yeah. Lav itmar Allah Rav Mari Amar b'kutra Rav Zid Amar b'beis hakisei. So this right. There's 2 ways. I mean, it's probably more than 2 ways, but 2 ways that you can do things in your house and it could really annoy your neighbor. Yeah. So one way is having a lot of smoke. Whatever, you're making a bonfire, you're smoking, and smoke is going into your neighbor's house. And now he's not saying anything. Does that establish a legal right for you to continue causing smoke to go into his house? Second case, a beis hakisei. There's terrible smells that are going from your house to his house. And he hasn't said anything about it. Does that establish a legal right to continue causing damage to his property? You're in your property. You're not in his property. So that's where we say, that's where Rav Nachman said, ein chazaka l'nezakin. No, just because a guy, doesn't say anything about the smell or the odor coming into his house, so that's not a reason. That's not a reason that you're allowed to continue damaging his property. So that's what he said. You can't create a legal force like that by doing damages to somebody else. Okay, so that's what we said. Ein chazaka l'nezaken. Fine. Okay, so now, but a regular case where he damages your field, really, she should say something. Okay, so now, Rav Yosef Amar la'olam ba'acher. Okay, going back. When Rav said our cryptic statement by our two dots, Eishes ish tzricha limchos, she has to make a protest, really, we're not referring to the husband. That was the first thought. We're really referring to somebody else. But earlier we said if someone else walks onto the field, she can always say that my husband should have made a protest. Why are you looking at me? So to that we say, la'olam ba'acher. Now, a very interesting case. Ukegon sha'achla miktas chazaka b'chaya bal v'shalosh la'achar misas habal. So you have a guy who got to use the field during the husband's lifetime. Then the husband died. And now for 3 years afterwards, he's been using this field after the death of the husband. Now, why do we believe this guy? He says because he hasn't called it migu. He has a certain logic. We know that migu is, right, when you claim one thing, right? And you could have claimed a much better claim and you would have been believed. So this current claim that you're claiming is believable, right? I could have had a much bigger lie and said, man, I would for sure be believed. When I say this, then you should also believe me. So what's his claim? Migudi by Amarle on a Zevintamina. The guy could have said, I've been on the field for 3 years. He could have just said, I bought it from you, from this lady. And he would have been believed. He's on the field for 3 years. After the husband died, she should have said something. If he would have said that, he would have been believed. So ki Amarle at Zevintele v'zamna nihale nehemen. He now claims like this. He says, listen, you sold it to the husband, and I bought it from the husband. And that's why I'm here for 3 years. So he used the field in her lifetime. He claims that the woman sold the field to the husband. And now the husband and this guy bought it from the husband. And that's why he's been here for 3 years. And so that's the case where a woman has to make a protest. And if not, then the field belongs to him. Now, it could be the Rashbam, and there's very long Rashbam talks about it. I didn't see it fully yet, but it's not like a much simpler case where basically he goes, oh, but it says Eishes Ish. That's why. Okay, never mind. It says Eishes Ish Tzricha Limchos. A married woman has to make a protest. I was going to say the simple case: the guy's on her field after her husband died, but that wouldn't be considered Eishes Ish. Okay, so this is a case where it's a married woman and she should have made a protest, and she didn't, and therefore it's going to belong to him. Okay.
There's a long summary.
Yeah, I mean, after all the dust settles, we have a cryptic statement of Eish is Tricha Limchos, Rav's statement. It either applies to her husband, who's causing damages on her field, and damages, according to at least at one point, damages require immediate vocalization, right? And if not, then it's going to belong to him. Alternatively, what he was referring to was if someone else came onto the field, and the person's claiming that basically, I bought it from you sold it to your husband, and I bought it from your husband. So in that case, in that situation, she should have made a protest, and if not, then we see that the field legally belongs to this other guy. Okay. Yeah. So
This has been very tricky.
yeah. So I mean that's that's really no numbered base, but I guess we'll just go 4 more lines and then we'll finish because it's the next daf. Like one section we caught up from and we went forward. Okay, let's see. So Gufa Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said Gufa Amar Rav. Sorry, last line of no numbered base. Ein machzikin beniksei eishes ish. So a person cannot establish a chazaka beniksei eishes ish. That was our statement before. You can't establish a chazaka in the property of a married woman because she'll just always say, my husband should have protested. So the Dayane Gola, the judges of Gola, Rashbam says, Shmuel Vikarna. Those judges, what did they say? They said, Machzikin, you could establish a legal right, even in a married lady's field. Amarav, Rav says, Halacha kedayane gola. The halacha is like the dayane gola that say that you could establish a legal right in the husband's field. So Amrule, Rav Kahana, Rav Asi, the Rav. So one sec, Rav just said the halacha is like dayane gola. Dayane gola said that you could make a chazaka in a married lady's field. But Rav is the one that said, Ein magzikin benichsa eish sish. So why is Rav now, when he has to make the halacha, he says, oh yeah, I think the halacha is like the Dayane Gola. They contradicted me, right? Amar Rav, Ein magzikin benichsa eish sish. A guy cannot come onto the property of a married woman and establish a chazaka. Dayane Gola said they could. And Rav says, I'm like the Dayane Gola. So they asked him, hold on, back up. They were following the shear, and they said, one second, Rav, don't you hold not that way? So did you retract your statements? Is that the understanding that you went back on your statements? And on that he's and that is no Amar Lahu, Mistabra Amri Ki de Rav Yosef. He says that what I mean to say is that in this case of Rav Yosef that we just said, where the guy bought the land from the husband, and then the husband died, and then he was there for 3 years. That's the case where Rav agreed that you can make a chazaka for 3 years. But in general, the guy comes onto the property of a married woman. Of course, Rav did not retract his statement. Rav agrees that you cannot make a chazaka on such a property. Rav was just saying the halacha is like the Dayane Gola. They were talking about a case where of Rav Yosef, meaning in the case of Rav Yosef, that's where Rav would agree that you could make a chazaka. Yeah. Fine, maybe I guess we'll start a little bit. We'll start a little bit, and then we'll have to continue. So okay, the next part of the Mishnah said, "V'lo leisha b'nichsei baila." V'lo leisha b'nichsei baila. So a woman could not establish a chazaka in the property of her husband. So says the Gemara, Pshita, Keva the Islam Mizone. So, meaning, yes, she's being sustained from the husband. So as long as the husband's sustaining you, we don't view the fact that you've been in his orchard for the last 3 years as belonging to you, right? The husband has a field. He has to provide her food. So every day he says, honey, go down to the field, take some apples, blueberries, potatoes, whatever you need. So now she's like, oh, I've been here for 3 years. It's mine. It's like, no. The fact that you've been here for 3 years means your husband's doing your job. So therefore, she cannot establish a legal right, in such a case. Second word, that's pshita. Obviously not. Even the Islam mizone. So mizone hu de ka'achla. Obviously, when you see her eating from the field, using the produce, she's obviously not using, her own. It's her husband's field. So lo tzricha the yiched la ara achrisi la mizona. You're right. We're talking about a case where he gave her another field for Mazonos. He said, okay, this specific field over there, that's for you for Mazonos. And still the husband is not so strict if she has, a little bit more than what she needs. And that's the case where leis lechazaka. So it's not where, everyone knows that, he owns a big property, a big estate. And she's always on this estate where she lives, the White House. Yeah, the president and his wife. So she's like, oh, you see, I'm in the White House. Now it belongs to me. So no, you're the first lady. Everything you're doing, it belongs to the husband or whatever, the government. But imagine it's the husband, yeah. So I'm sure maybe in South Africa, it belongs to the husband. Yeah, it's the husband's house. She's using his house. But if he has a field over there, somewhere else, he has a house somewhere else, and that maybe not everyone knows whose that is. So in such a case, maybe you would have thought that if she goes to that other property, and she's there for 3 years, maybe you'd have thought on that she could establish a legal right because she's taking more than maybe she's taking more than she needs, and the husband's not strict about it. But it's somewhere else where not everyone knows that it's for sure his property. So in such a case, the Mishnah still tells us, even in that case, at the end of the day, it's still his field and he's providing for her, even though it's in a different location, maybe not everyone knows about that. So yeah, fine. And then this will start tomorrow. The Gemara says, you're right, a chazaka she doesn't have, but a raya yesh. But if she brings a proof that the field that seemingly is her husband's, but she's been there for 3 years, then that would work. And that we have to figure out more. Questions for 1 second.